Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Kabir Considers. In this video, we're going to react to what would happen if Yellowstone blew up. So Yellowstone is this massive volcano in North America. I think it's huge, like compared to other volcanoes in and around the United States. It's, I think, if not the biggest, it's one of the biggest ones. It's not erupted in a very long time, probably like thousands of years or something like that, I think. But what would happen if it did? I mean, is it big enough that it would affect like really badly the surrounding areas? Because there's got to be people that live in that area. I think there's a TV show called Yellowstone. So, I mean, would it affect only those people that live there, or would it literally affect, you know, a much wider area?
This video is made possible by Skillshare. The first 1,000 people who follow the link down in my description will get 30% off of an annual subscription to Skillshare Premium. Geographically, the United States has to be one of the most beautiful countries in the world. From the Grand Canyon to the Rocky Mountains to the beaches on 2 of the world's oceans and beyond. The list just goes on and on. There's so many beautiful parts of the United States that the country established its own National Park Service back in 1916 in an effort to help maintain and protect them. And in total, the service is now in charge of 63 of these protected areas, and when combined together, they cover an area of 85 million square kilometers, which is roughly the same size as the entire country of Germany. One of the most famous of these.
When you put it like that, it really kind of, because you can visualize Germany's quite a big country, and that's just national parks for the US.
US national parks is Yellowstone. It's located in the northwestern corner of the state of Wyoming, with some overlap in Montana and Idaho, and it covers roughly 9,000 square kilometers of land. Yellowstone is well known for its abundance of wildlife and its many geothermal features, particularly Old Faithful, a geyser that regularly blasts water 50 full meters into the air approximately every 90 minutes. Over 4 million people visit the park to take in all of these sights every year, but Yellowstone is harboring a dangerous secret. It's located just atop a slowly ticking time bomb. The largest supervolcano, not only on the North American continent, but also anywhere on the planet right now.
Oh, wow. Okay. The biggest one on the planet? Wow, I thought it was just one of the biggest ones in America.
And it has a bit of a troubled past. You see, the Yellowstone Caldera that we know today was actually formed by several titanic volcanic eruptions that took place a long time ago. One of them took place 2.1 million years ago, another that took place 1.3 million years ago, and the most recent taking place approximately 664,000 years ago, long before Homo sapiens had ever arisen over in Africa. The last of those, that surrounds the Yellowstone Lake, ended up ejecting so much material during the blast that it left a 55 by 80 kilometer depression in the ground that we now know today as the current Yellowstone Caldera. And each of these 3 colossal events is what is known geologically as a super eruption, meaning that on the Volcano Explosivity Index, they would all be listed as a magnitude 8 or higher, and at a minimum, at least 1,000 cubic kilometers of material was ejected during the most recent blast. Which is, well, insane to comprehend, because that would basically be enough volcanic ash, lava, and other material to bury the entire state of Texas 1.5 meters deep.
That's crazy. That's like literally like covering Texas in like hellfire, basically. I mean, although it would be horrible to see, doesn't part of you just want to just to see?
If we look at the geological history of Earth, we know that on average, the planet suffers from one of these supervolcanic blasts roughly once every 100,000 years. The most recent such occurrence was the New Zealand Lake Taupo volcano, which blew up approximately 26,500 years ago. But by looking at the history of the Yellowstone eruptions specifically, a disturbing pattern begins to look like it's emerging. The second most recent explosion took place about 800,000 years after the third most recent. while the most recent one happened about 636,000 years after that one. And as mentioned previously, this most recent event happened 664,000 years ago, which is 28,000 years longer than the time between these two most recent explosions. This is one of the biggest reasons why Yellowstone in particular often receives so much attention in the global press. However, experts and scientists have repeatedly assured—
What is this? What is this material here? It looks like mushrooms or something. It looks like something out of The Last of Us. Like those weird sort of mutated mushrooms.
the public that an eruption at Yellowstone anytime in the near future is exceedingly unlikely, and the volcano's current status is dormant. Based on over 30 years worth of research, the evidence gathered suggests that while, yeah, it's theoretically possible, a mega eruption isn't likely to happen any time within the next 10,000 years. Keep in mind that on the geologic timeline, it took roughly 800,000 years between event number 3 and event 2, which is 136,000 years longer than we've gone now since event 1. But that's not really any fun. If Yellowstone defied all of the odds and blew up today anyway, how bad would it actually be? Let's do some speculation. The whole Yellowstone volcanic system itself is huge. Like, it's way bigger than you probably think it is. For example, the magma chamber that lies underneath the national park today is estimated to be a single connected chamber that is 60 kilometers long, 29 kilometers wide, and 8 kilometers deep, and holds an absolutely absurd amount of molten lava. This chamber is fed by a gigantic plume of molten rock that wells up from hundreds of miles beneath the Earth's surface. And fascinatingly, as this magma rises up into the chamber and cools, the ground above will periodically rise and fall. And because of this, the elevation of ground within the Yellowstone Park will fluctuate up or down by a few inches a year. Now, before any massive eruption would take place, it would very likely be preceded by a huge amount of seismic activity, basically a warning sign that something really bad was about to happen. Many seismologists estimate that there could be substantial earthquakes preceding any blast at Yellowstone that would last for weeks or even months beforehand as rock below gets broken up by magma as it surges further and further up towards the surface. Here, pressure would continue building and building and building and with increasing intensity until, with nowhere left to go, the magma would explode through the ground in a cataclysmic eruption with debris getting flung as high as 24 kilometers up into the stratosphere.
Wow, 24 kilometers. That is just crazy. Like 40 kilometers is a marathon. So like almost half a marathon's length up.
Shortly afterwards, the lava flows themselves would engulf the surrounding area, and anywhere inside a range of 65 kilometers from the epicenter would be in danger of becoming literally buried in lava, which is basically the entire territory of the national park itself. Beyond this immediate danger of burning, the blast would eject 1,000 cubic kilometers of material up into the sky, creating a type of umbrella cloud expanding evenly in all directions and darkening the skies over most of the North American continent. This cloud would rain down toxic volcanic ash across the entire mainland United States. Wyoming, Idaho, Colorado, Montana, and Utah will, however, experience the most significant devastation and will probably be almost completely buried with up to a meter thick of hot volcanic ash.
Wow.
Denver, Salt Lake City, and Boise will be severely damaged or just outright destroyed. Meanwhile, across the Midwest, Nevada, and southern Alberta, there would still be inches of ash coating everything in sight.
Really?
Even the Atlantic and Pacific coasts would likely see a small dusting, although much of it would be highly dependent on the time of year and weather patterns involved.
Would it really do, like, I mean, I'm not underestimating, how bad it would be, but this is like the entire USA here that's going to be, to some degree severely affected by this thing. Would it really be this bad?
Basically, if you're looking at this map, everything in blue would be completely wiped out. Everything in purple would be highly damaged. Everything in orange would be sort of damaged. And everything in yellow would be mildly damaged. The North American continent would take a pretty significant bruise. But the worst part of all of this would obviously be the terrible toll that it would take on human life. With a full meter of ash possibly being poured down upon you and your city, even if you are not close enough to see the volcano, it could still possibly kill not only you, but also plants, animals, and even crush buildings with the sheer weight of dense ash deposits.
Plus, if you breathe that stuff in, it's got to be terrible for your lungs.
Even just a few inches of ash can completely ruin farmland, clog up roadways, and create serious respiratory issues for large amounts of the population. Not to mention that it would take out key infrastructure, contaminate water supplies, down power lines, prevent nearly all air travel on the entire continent, and even take out electrical transformers, which would bring America's power grid to a complete and utter halt. What could be even worse is that the ash would likely wipe out the entire Midwest's crop of corn and soybeans, and could even poison the farmland for an entire generation. This would make food production within the United States severely crippled, and America would likely have to rely on food imports from other continents in order to survive. But beyond the absolute chaos going on across North America, a volcanic eruption this big would also have a major impact on the global climate and affect everybody who lives on this planet in some way. You see, volcanoes can emit sulfur aerosols that are capable of reflecting sunlight back away from the Earth, which causes the climate to cool down. For example, most recently, when Mount Pinatubo erupted in the Philippines in 1991, it's estimated that it cooled the planet by an entire 1 degree for at least a few years.
Wow.
And that's not to mention the Great Tambora eruption, which occurred in Indonesia in 1815.
So are we talking about like another ice age potentially? Jeez, I thought it would be like pretty bad for the Yellowstone area, but it's looking like it might be like an apocalyptic event here.
That eruption, which was rated as a Category 7 on the Explosivity Index, is believed to have cooled the planet enough to damage crops around the world, potentially even causing several severe famines in certain areas. There was even snowfall during the month of June in the eastern half of the United States that year, as it became known as the year without a summer. These eruptions, however, were relatively tiny events when compared to what a supervolcanic Yellowstone eruption might look like. Although it's hard to say with any kind of certainty, scientists estimate that with the amount of material that would be ejected into the atmosphere, the planet might cool by as much as 10 full degrees for an entire decade following a cataclysmic eruption at Yellowstone. Obviously, a change in the climate that huge would cause a global catastrophe, as crops around the world would be affected, likely endangering the lives of hundreds of millions of people and doing untold amounts of damage. FEMA, the U.S. Federal Emergency Management Agency, even published a rough estimate on what it thought the total damage cost to the United States would be in the event that Yellowstone ever actually blew. In that report, they estimated that it would cause roughly $3 trillion in damages, or almost 14% of the entire United States GDP.
Trillion.
So, yeah, Yellowstone blowing up like this would be really, really bad for everybody. But it's more than likely not gonna actually happen during any of our lifetimes unless one of you becomes immortal.
Is there any way to stop a volcano? Like, if you can feel the seismic activity coming, so you know it's coming, is there anything? We probably haven't got the technology to do it. Yeah, yeah. I was trying to think if we dropped a nuke in there, that'd probably make it even worse, wouldn't it?
Because if you look at the frequency of the last 3 big eruptions, the odds of one happening in any given year are roughly 0.0001%, which is actually lower than the odds of civilization getting wiped out by an asteroid. So this isn't really a problem that you have to worry too much about right now. But maybe there's another problem or challenge that you are facing right now for a big personal goal or a passion project that you've been really excited to start, but you're not quite sure that you have the skills required to do it just yet.
Here we go.
One of the most common questions that I get asked by people is how to get started creating videos on YouTube.
Yeah, I definitely underestimated the damage that would be caused by Yellowstone. I mean, it's probably quite easy to do if you're not a geologist, you don't know about these things in a huge degree, but man, it would be terrible. Like, not only would it be economically bad, but and obviously in terms of the fatality rates, like, he didn't mention how many people would potentially die, but we are probably talking, based on the areas, like based on how large the areas of land were that would be severely impacted, we're probably talking in the hundreds of thousands. So it would be like a complete and utter catastrophe. It would be insane. And then you've got the global, the climate change, you've got the food shortages, it would be chaos. It would be almost like if a nuclear war was going to break out, like a small scale one. Like, it'd be very, very, very bad. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.